Welcome back to The Deep Dive, where we plunge headfirst into the fascinating stories behind the things that shape our world. Today, we're unmasking a true cinematic legend, a boogeyman that has haunted our screens for decades. We're talking about a film that dared to bring 40 years of history and, perhaps more importantly, unresolved trauma back to the forefront.
That's right. When a franchise with such a storied past decides to make a return, especially one as iconic as Halloween, it's rarely just about the scares.
Right.
It's about revisiting a legacy, grappling with the lasting impact of terror, and redefining what it means to face the darkness of the past.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to deep dive into Halloween from 2018. This isn't just another sequel. It's a bold reimagining that acts as a direct continuation of the original 1978 masterpiece.
Yeah, big swing.
We're going to unpack its incredible journey, from its convoluted conceptual stages to its massive critical and box office success. We'll explore the unique narrative choices that made it stand out, the painstaking production details that brought Michael Myers back to life, and its significant influence on the horror genre as a whole.
And we have some truly comprehensive sources for this deep dive. They lay bare the decisions behind every step of its creation and its remarkable reception, ensuring we leave no stone unturned in understanding this pivotal installment in the Halloween franchise.
Okay.
So get ready to step back into Haddonfield, Illinois, because this is the story of Laurie Strode, 40 years after her first terrifying encounter with Michael Myers.
But before we delve into the brilliance of the 2018 film, we need to understand the wilderness it emerged from, a decade-long saga of creative misfires and dead ends that almost buried the franchise for good.
Yeah, it was. It was messy for a while there.
The Halloween franchise was at a real crossroads after Rob Zombie's Halloween II came out in 2009. What's particularly striking is that Zombie himself publicly disavowed any further involvement right after its release.
Right. He announced on MTV, while promoting that sequel, that he wouldn't return to direct another one.
That's a pretty definitive statement for a director, wouldn't you say? It screams creative exhaustion.
It absolutely does. For a director to publicly disavow any further involvement, especially with such a high-profile intellectual property, or IP, as we call these marketable creative assets, it signals a profound creative fatigue, or, a desire to move on.
Sure.
Yet what's truly fascinating here is that despite Zombie's very public reluctance, the Weinstein Company, owners of Dimension Films at the time, immediately announced a follow-up, Halloween 3D.
Just 2 days later.
Yeah, just 2 days after Halloween II's release. This speaks volumes about a studio's relentless desire to keep a valuable IP alive, almost regardless of the creative team's exhaustion or long-term vision.
It's all about the brand, isn't it?
Pretty much. The sheer momentum and profitability of the brand often override individual artistic preferences.
And it wasn't just an announcement. They even had a director, Patrick Lesio, and a writer, Todd Farmer, attached, aiming for a summer 2010 release. The initial plot concept for Halloween 3D was pretty specific. It would pick up right where Zombie's 2009 film left off, with Laurie Strode committed to a psychiatric hospital after murdering Dr. Loomis and Sheriff Brackett.
Right, kind of a dark turn for Laurie.
And Michael tracking her down a year later. Tyler Mane was set to reprise Michael, and Tom Atkins was even cast as a psychiatrist.
Wow, Tom Atkins.
But Scout Taylor Compton, who played Laurie in Zombies films, wasn't planning on returning. So even at this early stage, there were already creative cracks.
Precisely. And despite all that early momentum, that version of the film never materialized. It was delayed multiple times due to budget disagreements, concerns that it was being made too quickly.
Always budget issues.
And then Leslie and Farmer prioritized other projects like Drive Angry and an abortive Hellraiser reboot.
You're right, Drive Angry.
This rapid succession of ideas, personnel changes, and false starts underscores Dimension Films' profound struggle to find a viable, consistent direction for the franchise.
Yeah.
It reveals a fundamental lack of clear vision for Halloween's future at that point, a studio grasping for any thread to pull on.
Yeah, the many failed attempts really paints a picture of a studio throwing ideas at a wall, hoping something would stick.
Pretty much, yeah.
After Halloween 3D got shelved, we had Ben Collins and Luke Piotrowski pitching a new reboot in 2012, simply titled Halloween. Then in 2013, Josh Stolberg was revising a script called Halloween Asylum?
Asylum. I remember hearing about that one.
Which would have been a direct continuation of Halloween Resurrection, with Michael Myers escaping death row.
Oh, wow. From Resurrection. That's a choice.
Each attempt seemed to pivot wildly, almost at random.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, These abandoned concepts reveal a lot about the creative pressures and audience expectations of the time. Think about Halloween, Asylum Myers, breaking free from death row. That concept leans into a more action-oriented, perhaps more conventional horror sequel trope that was popular in the early 2010s.
Right. Less suspense, more spectacle.
Exactly. Rather than the subtle dread of the original. How might that have fared against the eventual 2018 film? It highlights the ongoing challenge of maintaining the core identity of Michael Myers while trying to innovate or expand the lore without, diluting it. These constant shifts suggest a studio trying to chase trends rather than committing to a singular strong vision for their iconic villain.
Okay, here's where it gets truly bewildering, or perhaps just outright desperate. In 2014, Halloween 3D was revived one last time, with Scout Taylor Compton even agreeing to return.
Back again. Okay.
But then, due to the massive success of the Paranormal Activity franchise, Bob Weinstein from Dimension insisted it had to be a found footage film.
Oh no, not found footage Halloween.
Todd Farmer, the writer, pitched it as a mockumentary about a deranged fan committing murders during the making of an in-universe film based on their original script. I can only imagine the conversations around that table.
What's absolutely fascinating here is the almost desperate attempt to capitalize on a current trend, even if it completely misaligned with the franchise's established identity and tone.
Totally.
The source explicitly states that none of the cast and crew involved liked the concept.
That's a huge red flag.
A monumental red flag, yeah. When the creative team themselves are against the core idea, it speaks to a period of genuine desperation, a time when Dimension Films was grasping at straws to keep the Halloween brand relevant without a truly clear or resonant vision. This really was rock bottom for the franchise creatively, before a new, clear direction could finally emerge. It's a prime example of external market pressures dictating creative decisions, often to the detriment of the artistic integrity.
And then came the big shift. In December 2015, after Halloween Returns, another standalone film about Michael Myers on death row, which also failed to go into production on scheduled Dimension Films, finally lost the rights to the franchise.
Finally.
They reverted to Miramax, and that's when everything changed. It felt like the universe was course-correcting.
It was a truly pivotal moment. Miramax then partnered with Blumhouse Productions, a company that by then was synonymous with successful, often low-budget, high-concept horror films.
Right. Blumhouse was huge by then.
Exactly. Jason Blum himself said that the original Halloween was a milestone that profoundly influenced Blumhouse to begin making horror films, and he expressed immense excitement about working with Malik Akkad,
son of the original producer.
the son of Mustafa Akkad, who produced the original, and John Carpenter. Akkad specifically sought out Blum because of his proven success and deep understanding of the genre.
Smart move.
This partnership truly signaled a new, more promising era for Halloween. It's also worth noting that Mike Flanagan, known for films like Hush and later The Haunting of Hill House,
Oh, interesting.
was initially courted to direct, but ultimately passed on the offer, leaving the door open for an even more unexpected creative team.
But the real game changer, the moment that made fans collectively gasp, was when John Carpenter, the master himself, the co-writer and director of the 1978 original, returned.
Yeah, that was huge news.
In 2016, he signed on as an executive producer, stating his intention. 38 years after the original Halloween, I'm going to help to try to make the 10th sequel the scariest of them all.
A big promise.
That's a huge statement from someone who had distanced himself for so long and, frankly, hadn't been shy about his disdain for some of the sequels.
Indeed.
Yeah.
What's truly compelling here is understanding why Carpenter, a legend who had largely washed his hands of the franchise, returned after all those years.
Yeah, what changed?
He openly admitted he hadn't even seen all the sequels, but he felt compelled to stop throwing rocks from the sidelines and get in there and try to do something positive. His dissatisfaction stemmed largely from Rob Zombie's reimagining and the added backstory for Michael Myers. Carpenter felt that trying to explain Michael, to give him a human motivation, fundamentally undermined his terror.
Took the mystery away.
Exactly. He explicitly stated he wanted to take Michael back to his more mysterious roots, describing him as a force of nature. He's supposed to be almost supernatural.
Force of nature. Yeah.
This was a direct philosophical contrast to what Zombie had done, stripping away any human motivations to restore the pure, unknowable evil of the shape. This singular vision from the franchise's creator became the guiding star for the new film.
And then we got the surprising, yet, in retrospect, brilliant choice of David Gordon Green and Danny McBride.
Right, the comedy guys.
They were announced as screenwriters in February 2017, with Green also directing. Carpenter was impressed with their pitch, famously stating they get it. They even brought in their colleague Jeff Radley to co-write. It felt like such an unexpected choice, given Green and McBride's comedy roots responsible for films like Pineapple Express and Eastbound and Down.
It was certainly surprising on the surface, and many fans raised an eyebrow. However, Jason Blum, the head of Blumhouse, hired Green specifically for his amazing storytelling abilities, not just his genre expertise.
Interesting. So it was about the story, not just the scares.
Precisely. This shows a commitment to narrative depth and character over simply hiring a horror veteran known for jump scares. It was a calculated risk that paid off handsomely.
Yeah.
McBride initially stated, "We all came to the decision that remaking something that already works isn't a good idea, so we just have a reimagining instead." This evolved into something even bolder.
Right.
And critically, Green and McBride had John Carpenter's blessing and shared his vision for Michael Myers.
Here's where they really made their mark and reset everything. The decision to ignore all previous sequels.
The big one.
The 2018 film would be a direct continuation of the 1978 original, wiping away decades of convoluted lore. McBride even likened it to an alternate reality, saying it felt cooler to make Halloween 2 rather than Halloween 11.
Yeah, I get that.
This was a huge narrative swing for a franchise with such a tangled continuity. What kind of narrative freedom did this actually unlock?
Oh, immense narrative freedom.
Yeah.
A clean slate, which is precisely what the franchise needed after years of increasingly convoluted plots and, frankly, diminishing returns.
Definitely.
By retconning decades of existing lore, they could simplify the timeline and refocus squarely on the core characters and themes established in the original, particularly the enduring trauma of Laurie Strode.
Right, focus on Laurie.
It allowed them to discard elements that had perhaps diluted Michael Myers' mystique, like the sibling relationship between Laurie and Michael, introduced in Halloween the 2nd, 1981.
The brother-sister thing.
Which they felt made him less frightening as a pure, irrational evil. The film explicitly reinforces this with Allison's line, "No, it was not her brother. That was something people made up."
Right there in the dialogue.
Yep. Clears it right up.
And that pivot, that bold retcon, had to be a delicate balance. How do you satisfy longtime fans who've invested in all those sequels while simultaneously creating a new entry point for a fresh audience?
That was the challenge, for sure. McBride tried to address this by ensuring the film would pay homage and respect to every Halloween that has been out there, despite the new continuity.
Little nods and Easter eggs.
Exactly. Weaving in subtle references, visual cues, and musical motifs that would resonate with the hardcore fans without alienating newcomers. And crucially, despite Green and McBride's comedy background, the film was distanced from the comedy genre, with McBride noting there was, like, maybe one joke on the page, but the rest is straight horror.
Good call.
This commitment to a serious, terrifying tone, coupled with Carpenter's return and his vision, immediately signaled to fans that this wasn't another misstep. It was about restoring the fundamental dread of the original.
Let's talk about Michael Myers himself, because the creative team really went back to basics with him. Carpenter wanted to strip him back to his mysterious roots, describing him again as that force of nature. But McBride added a layer, saying his approach was humanizing the character, wanting to be scared by something that I really think could happen. How do you reconcile force of nature with humanizing? That sounds almost contradictory.
It does, but it's a profound distinction, and it's key to the film's success. When Carpenter speaks of Michael as a force of nature, he means an entity without human motivation, regret, or even a discernible target beyond pure, unreasoning evil.
Right, just kills.
He's not seeking revenge. He's not driven by a traumatic past. He simply is. This absence of human connection is what makes him so terrifying.
Okay.
McBride's humanizing comes in the method of his terror. It's not about giving Michael a relatable backstory, but making his actions feel grounded and terrifyingly real.
I see. The way he kills.
Exactly. I think it's much more horrifying, McBride said, to be scared by someone standing in the shadows while you're taking the trash out.
Yeah, that primal fear.
It shifts the horror from elaborate traps or grotesque displays to something grounded, primal, and deeply unsettling in its simplicity and efficiency. Michael isn't a slasher villain with a gimmick. He's the silent, unyielding boogeyman that could emerge from any shadow, making his presence deeply unsettling because his humanity is stripped away, leaving only pure, predatory instinct.
So, with that clear vision in place, let's move into how they brought this nightmare to life, starting with the writing process.
Okay.
Our sources tell us the team Green, McBride, and Fradley wrote a staggering 80 drafts of the script over 8 months.
80. That's intense.
And rewrites continued right up until the last week of filming. That's an intense level of refinement. But what does that relentless iteration truly tell us about Green and McBride's approach? Was it about perfecting a singular vision, or perhaps finding one amidst immense pressure?
It suggests an almost obsessive pursuit of perfection, yes, but also a profound willingness to entirely abandon concepts that weren't landing.
80 drafts isn't just tweaking commas.
No way. 80 drafts isn't just about tweaking dialogue. It speaks to fundamental shifts in character arcs, plot beats, and even the very premise. Think about it. They initially included Laurie's daughter, Jamie Lloyd, from previous continuities.
From Halloween 4 and 5.
Right. Included her in the script before changing her to Karen, acknowledging the original sequels only to discard their character choices.
Interesting.
And in an early draft, they even reimagined the original film's ending, where Laurie shoots Michael off the balcony after he murders Dr. Loomis.
Whoa, changing the original ending?
Yeah, but Green ultimately backed down from that decision, showing a willingness to self-correct based on what served the story best. This wasn't just refinement. It was a process of constant reevaluation, pushing them to make radical shifts right up to the wire.
Right.
Aiming for that perfect balance of new terror and nostalgic reverence while staying true to the spirit of the original. This level of dedication explains why the final script felt so tight and impactful.
And with a radical vision locked, the next monumental step was finding the right faces and especially the right return to bring this re-envisioned nightmare to life.
The casting, yeah, crucial.
The casting, particularly the return of Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode, was monumental. She was confirmed in September 2017. Her character in this film is so different from the final girl we knew from 1978.
Oh, completely different.
She's an armed, prepared survivor suffering from severe PTSD. How significant was this character transformation for the film's overall impact?
This character transformation is incredibly significant and truly groundbreaking for the horror genre, I think. It allows the film to explore the long-term devastating effects of trauma, not just the immediate terror.
Right, the 40 years later part?
Exactly. Laurie isn't just a victim reacting. She's an active, proactive protagonist who has spent decades preparing for the inevitable return of her tormentor.
She's ready.
This portrayal resonates deeply with modern audiences, showcasing her not as broken by her past, but as forged by it. It creates a much more compelling and resonant character arc, a true survivor. The writers intentionally ignored the sibling relationship between Laurie and Michael, which was introduced in Halloween the 2nd, 1981, precisely because they felt it diluted Michael's terrifying nature by giving him a human connection to his victim.
Back to that force of nature idea.
Exactly. Curtis herself returned because, as she said, when she read what Green and McBride had come up with, it made so much sense to me. She felt it was the original story in many, many, many ways, just retold 40 years later with my granddaughter, making the core insight here that for Laurie, surviving wasn't an end point, but the beginning of a lifelong active fight.
And to build out Laurie's world, they cast Judy Greer as her strange daughter, Karen Nelson, and Andi Matichak as her granddaughter, Allison Nelson.
The Strode women.
This established a new family lineage for Laurie, a new generation to be impacted by Michael's shadow.
The introduction of this new family dynamic allows for a rich exploration of intergenerational trauma. Laurie's past doesn't just affect her. It ripples down to Karen and Allison.
You really feel that tension.
Showcasing how this dark legacy binds them all, despite their initially different reactions to it. Karen, taken by the state at 12, due to Laurie's obsessive preparations, resents her mother's paranoia.
Understandably, maybe.
Allison, however, is caught between the two, trying to understand her grandmother's burden while living a normal teenage life. This contrast is crucial for the narrative.
Yeah.
It also highlights the challenges of retconning established lore. Danielle Harris, who famously played Jamie Lloyd, Laurie's daughter, in previous Halloween timelines like Halloween 4 and 5, expressed her disappointment that her character wasn't included, despite her appeals to Blumhouse.
Oof, yeah, I remember that. Tough for those fans.
It shows the delicate balance of honoring the past while charting a new course, a choice that ultimately prioritized the new narrative over existing fan expectations from discarded timelines.
For Michael Myers himself, they went with a dual portrayal. Nick Castle, the original Michael Myers from 1978, reprised his role for a cameo.
Just a cameo, but so important.
Specifically for one scene, his reflection in a window, and he did all of Michael's breathing sounds in post-production.
That iconic breathing.
But the bulk of the performance came from stuntman James Jude Courtney. That's a thoughtful way to connect to the past while building the future.
This dual casting approach was ingenious. It ensured continuity with the original spirit of the shape, bringing back that iconic presence with Castle's brief but potent physical and vocal contribution.
Passing the torch, kinda.
Exactly. Castle himself described it as a passing of the torch to Courtney, who clearly took his role incredibly seriously. Courtney's method acting involved observing a cat to create Michael's efficient cat-like style of movement.
A cat, really?
Yeah. He believed cats are the most perfect hunting machines on the planet, and he carried that non-judgmental approach to the way I moved as the shape.
Huh. I can actually see that now, that quiet efficiency.
This unusual but effective inspiration helped imbue Michael with that pure, predatory, almost alien evil, making him utterly chilling without any overt explanation of his motives. The insight here is that Michael's terror lies in his predatory nature, not his human malice.
And the supporting cast was fantastic, too. Haluk Bilginer as Dr. Ranbir Sartain, Michael's psychiatrist and Dr. Loomis's former student.
A really interesting character.
And Will Patton as Deputy Frank Hawkins, who arrested Michael back in '78. We also had Ryan Reese and Jefferson Hall as the true crime podcasters, Dana Haynes and Aaron Corey.
The podcasters.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't fare too well.
Who, as we'll discuss, play a surprisingly pivotal and tragic role.
It's worth mentioning the voice cameo of Dr. Sam Loomis, originally portrayed by the late Donald Pleasance.
Oh, right. How did they handle that?
A sound-alike actor, Colin Mahan, provided a voiceover from a recording, echoing Loomis's original sentiment that Michael needed to be killed because there was no point in keeping evil alive.
A nice touch. Respectful.
It was a clever and respectful way to acknowledge the character without recasting him, keeping his presence felt. We even learned that an early draft had Loomis appearing on screen, but that idea was scrapped.
Probably for the best.
Demonstrating the careful balance between homage and creating something new. P.J. Souls, who played Linda in the original, also had an off-screen voice cameo as Allison's English teacher.
Oh, cool. I missed that.
Another nice, subtle nod to the original film, adding to that layered sense of continuity for longtime fans.
Now let's talk about the actual filming. Principal photography kicked off in January 2018 in Charleston, South Carolina, wrapping up by February, but then they had reshoots in June.
Quick shoot, then tweaks.
Michael Simmons was the cinematographer. That quick turnaround for principal photography followed by reshoots often indicates a responsive production process, adapting to feedback. What does that tell us about the production's agility?
It absolutely tells us they were agile and responsive, which is critical for a horror film. Often reshoots are used to refine pacing, enhance scares, or clarify story beats based on test screenings.
Fine-tuning the scares.
Exactly. It suggests they are constantly refining the film even after initial principal photography, aiming to maximize tension and impact. For instance, the script's ending was notably reworked during these reshoots.
Oh, okay.
Danny McBride emphasized that the film aims to create a sense of tension and dread, rather than relying on graphic violence.
Which feels very Carpenter.
Absolutely. This aligns perfectly with Carpenter's original vision, which focused on slow-burn suspense rather than gratuitous gore. The choice of Charleston allowed them to create a convincing stand-in for Haddonfield, capturing that quintessential American suburban feel.
Yeah, it looked great.
That provides such a chilling contrast to Michael's evil.
And the Michael Myers mask itself, an iconic piece of horror history. Christopher Nelson designed the makeup and visual effects, creating a mask that was weathered and aged to reflect the character's authentic evolution since the original.
The mask looked incredible in this one.
That attention to detail specifically on the mask is remarkable given how crucial it is to Michael's identity.
It truly highlights the profound commitment to realism and how even seemingly small details contribute fundamentally to the overall authenticity and horror. Nelson meticulously studied the decomposition and wrinkling of 40-year-old masks.
Wow.
To ensure it looked genuinely aged, decayed, and battle-worn, as if it had truly been sitting in an evidence locker for decades.
Looked like it, yeah.
His goal wasn't to copy the original design exactly, but to capture its visual feeling, recognizing that the original mask looked completely different in every single angle due to lighting and camera work.
Capturing the vibe, not just the look.
Precisely. This commitment to capturing the essence rather than just replicating is key. He also notably advised Green not to cast a hulking stuntman for Michael Myers, ensuring that the character's physicality aligned with the leaner, more ominous portrayal in the first film.
Back to that cat-like movement idea.
Reinforcing that Michael's power comes from his relentless presence, not brute force. The mask itself is almost a character, a vessel for the evil.
And you can't have Halloween without that iconic score. John Carpenter returned to score the 2018 film, having scored the original, Halloween the Second, and Halloween the Third.
The man himself.
He collaborated with his son Cody Carpenter and Daniel Davies. How integral was his direct involvement with the music?
Oh, absolutely inseparable from the Halloween identity. It's as iconic as Michael's mask.
Totally. That piano theme. Chills.
His involvement ensured the iconic soundscape remained integral, which is a crucial element for fan recognition and, more importantly, for building the film's oppressive and terrifying atmosphere. He considered various approaches, creating an entirely new score, updating and amplifying the old one, or combining both. Ultimately, they chose a blend that felt both classic and fresh.
It really worked. Familiar but new.
Bringing back familiar, terrifying motifs while introducing new, equally unsettling ones. The album, fittingly, was released on the same day as the film, solidifying its importance to the overall experience and its role in reestablishing the film's terrifying mood. It's impossible to imagine a Halloween film without Carpenter's chilling, minimalist piano score.
All right, now that we've covered the fascinating journey of getting this film made, let's dive into the story itself, because it takes some pretty bold swings after 40 years.
Let's get into it.
On October 29, 2018, Michael Myers, institutionalized at Smiths Grove Psychiatric Hospital for 4 decades, is being prepped for transfer. True crime podcasters Aaron Corey and Dana Haynes visit, trying to provoke him with his mask.
Really bad idea.
To no effect. They want answers, but Michael, ever silent, gives them nothing. The next night, October 30, a bus carrying multiple patients, including Michael, crashes during transfer. He escapes, murdering 2 people and stealing their truck, setting the stage for his return to Haddonfield.
What's immediately established here is how quickly the film reestablishes Michael as an unyielding force, despite his long incarceration.
No rest on him.
None at all. The podcasters, while serving as exposition, also highlight the public fascination with true crime and serial killers, almost treating Michael as a phenomenon to be dissected, which becomes a key, almost fatal element later on. Meanwhile, back in Haddonfield, Laurie Strode is living a life consumed by fear, a stark contrast to the carefree teenager we knew.
Totally different person.
She drinks heavily, rarely leaves her heavily fortified house, and suffers from profound, debilitating PTSD. Her relationship with her daughter, Karen, is strained. The state took Karen away when she was 12 due to Laurie's obsessive, almost militaristic preparations for Michael's return.
Wow, didn't know that detail about the state taking her.
Yeah, it adds another layer to their dynamic. Laurie's granddaughter, Allison, tries to maintain a connection, caught in the middle of this generational divide.
Tough spot for her.
This setup immediately communicates the enduring, devastating impact of Michael's original rampage. Not just on Laurie, but on her entire family, demonstrating the deep emotional scars left by an encounter with pure evil.
Then, on Halloween morning, the horror truly begins. Michael finds Aaron and Dana, the podcasters, visiting his sister Judith's grave.
And he gets his mask back.
In a chilling sequence, he brutally kills them both, reclaiming his mask from Aaron's car. He then murders a mechanic for his coveralls, fully transforming back into the Shake we remember.
Back in business.
Simultaneously, Laurie learns of his escape and desperately tries to warn Karen, who, understandably, dismisses her concerns, urging her to move on from a past she believes is long buried. It's a tragic disconnect.
This is where the film begins to weave its intricate, terrifying web. Michael's almost ritualistic reclaiming of his mask and his coveralls signals his full, undeniable return to his iconic, terrifying form.
Yeah, it's like putting on the uniform.
It's less about a disguise and more about becoming himself again, shedding the human trappings of institutionalization. Laurie's desperate attempts to warn her family and their dismissal of her are deeply tragic and central to the intergenerational trauma theme.
You feel for her.
They see her as broken by the past, burdened by a delusion, while she sees them as dangerously naive, unable to comprehend the evil that she knows will return. This is a crucial element for you, the listener, to grasp. How Laurie's trauma has transformed her into a warrior, but also alienated her from the very people she's trying to protect. Her isolation makes her both powerful and profoundly vulnerable, highlighting the burden of being the sole survivor.
Halloween night arrives, and the chaos truly begins. Allison finds her boyfriend Cameron cheating and leaves with his friend Oscar, seeking a moment of normalcy that will quickly be shattered.
Poor Oscar.
Michael then ruthlessly kills Allison's best friend Vicky and her boyfriend Dave in a particularly brutal sequence.
Yeah, that sequence is rough. Very effective.
Deputy Frank Hawkins, who arrested Michael back in '78, and Laurie hear the incident on the radio and go to the house. This is it. Laurie sees Michael for the first time in 40 years.
A moment we waited for.
Shoots him with her shotgun, but he flees. The police then take Laurie, Karen, and Ray, Karen's husband, back to Laurie's heavily fortified home for protection, unaware they are leading the wolf to the sheepfold.
And here's where the plot takes a truly shocking and unexpected turn, adding a layer of unexpected complexity and moral ambiguity.
Yeah, the Sartain twist.
Dr. Ranbir Sartain, Michael's psychiatrist and former student of Dr. Loomis, who seemingly wants to understand Michael, persuades Sheriff Barker to hunt Michael down. Michael kills Oscar, but Hawkins and Sartain rescue Allison.
Oh, okay.
In a pivotal moment, Hawkins incapacitates Michael and attempts to kill him, finally ending the nightmare. However, Sartain, who has become dangerously obsessed with Michael.
Not in a good way.
Not with curing him, but with observing him in his purest state attacks, Hawkins leaving him for dead. It's then revealed that Sartain actually orchestrated Michael's escape, wanting to study him in the wild.
That was wild. Totally flipped the script.
It is a profound subversion of expectations, blurring the lines of good and evil and adding a chilling human element to Michael's return, making a supposedly benevolent figure into a terrifying catalyst for chaos. The insight here is that human obsession can be as dangerous as the evil it seeks to understand.
A truly chilling revelation, and one that shifts the blame from external forces to human hubris. Sartain then drives an unconscious Michael and Allison to Laurie's house, completely unaware of the lethal destination he has chosen.
Big mistake. Huge.
Michael wakes up, kills Sartain, a deserved, if brutal, end for the misguided doctor, and Allison flees into the woods.
Smart move by Allison.
Michael proceeds to kill the two unsuspecting police officers stationed outside Laurie's home and strangles Ray to death, methodically eliminating any obstacles. The stage is perfectly set for the final brutal confrontation between the Strode women and Michael.
This sequence ramps up the stakes significantly, isolating Laurie and her family in their supposed sanctuary.
The fortress becomes a trap.
Exactly. In Michael's final showdown with Laurie, he stabs her and pushes her over a balcony, a direct and terrifying echo of their first encounter in 1978.
Such a great callback.
When he goes to check her body, she's got another callback to the original, but this time it's a trap. Karen, who has finally come to believe her mother's warnings and witnessed Michael's brutality firsthand, shoots Michael in the cheek with a shotgun.
Yeah, Karen steps up,
mirroring Laurie's earlier attempt. This is a powerful moment of generational empowerment, a torch passing from one Strode woman to the next. Finally, Laurie, Karen, and Allison, working together as a united front, managed to trap Michael in the safe room and set the house ablaze, burning him alive.
The ultimate trap.
Laurie utters a final defiant goodbye to Michael before fainting from her injuries. The trio is taken to the hospital, and the final shot is of the burning basement, with Michael nowhere in sight.
But is he gone?
The post-credits scene, where Michael's ominous breathing is heard, confirms his survival, leaving the door open for future terror and reinforcing that true evil is never truly vanquished.
Of course not. It's Michael Myers. Let's talk about the key themes that truly elevate this film beyond a typical slasher. First, Laurie's journey is all about trauma and resilience.
Absolutely.
Her PTSD, her heavy drinking, her heavily fortified house, and her estranged relationship with Karen paint a profound picture of someone living with the aftermath for decades, not just surviving one night. It's a raw, unflinching look at enduring psychological scars.
This is absolutely critical and perhaps the most compelling insight of the film. It delves deep into the long-term psychological scars left by extreme violence. Laurie's preparation isn't just a plot device, it's a manifestation of her trauma.
Right.
A desperate, decades-long attempt to regain control in a world where she feels constantly threatened. And what's particularly insightful is how this trauma ripples down, creating an intergenerational impact.
You really feel it with Karen and Allison.
Karen and Allison, while not directly attacked by Michael in 1978, are profoundly affected by Laurie's past.
Yeah.
The film showcases a family bound by this dark legacy, with each character reacting differently. From Karen's initial skepticism and resentment to Allison's empathetic concern, yet ultimately having to confront it together.
Yeah.
It makes the horror deeply personal and familial, exploring how the past, if unresolved, can literally consume the present.
And the nature of evil itself. They truly went back to Carpenter's vision of Michael as a force of nature, rather than a human with relatable motives.
Back to basics.
He's terrifying precisely because he is unknowable and relentless. There's no reasoning with him, no understanding his motives.
This philosophical return to Michael's essence is what makes him so effective and terrifying in this film. He doesn't have a specific reason for killing, nor does he feel pain or remorse or even a flicker of human recognition.
Jess.
This absence of human motivation or vulnerability makes him a pure embodiment of evil, an unstoppable, inhuman entity. He is simply the shape, a void that consumes. It removes any possibility of rationalization or empathy, increasing the sense of dread and hopelessness when he appears. This contrasts sharply with some of the earlier sequels that tried to give him a backstory or explain his motives, which often inadvertently humanized him and, paradoxically, made him less scary.
Right. Explaining evil sometimes lessens it.
The core insight here is that for Halloween 2018, terror wasn't just about jump scares. It was about confronting an unknowable, unreasoning void. An evil so primal it transcends human understanding, making it fundamentally more terrifying.
And the film definitely subverts expectations, most notably with Dr. Sartain's shocking turn. His obsession with Michael leads him to become a catalyst for chaos, blurring the lines of good and evil.
Yeah, that twist.
That was a twist no one saw coming, and it forces you to question where true danger lies.
Indeed. Sartain's character serves as a fascinating exploration of how even those supposedly dedicated to understanding and containing evil can be corrupted by it.
The observer becomes the participant.
His intellectual curiosity, initially presented as a scientific pursuit, morphs into a dangerous obsession, ultimately making him an enabler of Michael's violence. It raises an important question. What happens when the supposed experts become just as dangerous as the monsters they study? It adds a layer of psychological horror that wasn't expected, a human betrayal that complicates the traditional slasher narrative. This twist forces the audience to consider that sometimes the greatest threat isn't just the overt monster, but the human fascination, manipulation, and ultimately the arrogance that seeks to control or understand what is truly unknowable.
And perhaps one of the most powerful and discussed themes, especially at the time of its release, was the feminist undercurrents. Jamie Lee Curtis herself, at San Diego Comic-Con, explicitly linked the film to the Me Too movement, describing it as a film about trauma. She stated that Laurie is taking back her narrative. She has carried the trauma and PTSD of someone who was attacked. And there comes a point where you say, I am not a victim.
Powerful words.
How profound was this message for modern audiences?
This is a crucial element for you, the listener, to grasp, as it elevates the film far beyond a simple slasher. Laurie's journey becomes a powerful allegory for reclaiming agency after victimhood.
Yeah, it really resonated.
Her transformation from a vulnerable, final girl to a prepared, active survivor who has weaponized her trauma resonates deeply with broader societal conversations about victimhood, resilience, and fighting back. In a time when narratives of empowerment and survival were, and continue to be, so vital, Laurie's character became more powerful and relevant than ever before. Her story is a testament to perseverance, not just against Michael Myers, but against the lingering, unseen effects of trauma. It allowed the film to connect with modern audiences on a very profound emotional level, making her not just a horror icon, but a symbol of strength and defiance, a survivor who refuses to let her past define her as merely a victim. It gave the film a deeper, resonant meaning that few horror sequels achieve.
With such a compelling story and strong themes, the film was poised for a big impact. It premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival on September 8, 2018, to a rapturous reception.
Yeah, TIFF Midnight Madness audiences loved it.
And then had its theatrical release in North America on October 19, 2018, perfectly timed a week before the 40th anniversary of the original.
Perfect timing. The marketing blitz was equally impressive and clearly effective. Universal reportedly spent an estimated $75.5 million on advertising.
Wow, that's a lot for a $10 film.
Ensuring the film was seen everywhere. Key marketing events included an exclusive footage premiere at CinemaCon, which garnered extremely positive reactions and built early industry buzz.
Get the hype going early.
The San Diego Comic-Con panel with Jamie Lee Curtis was particularly impactful, especially when she made that powerful connection to the Me Too movement, garnering significant media attention and adding a crucial layer of social relevance to the film.
Yeah, that made headlines.
They also released 2 highly anticipated trailers, one in June and one in September, expertly building anticipation and showcasing the film's blend of classic scares and fresh narrative. And for the fans, Trick or Treat Studios obtained official costume licensing rights, with Christopher Nelson and Vincent Van Dyke adapting the screen-used mold of Michael Myers' mask for mass market sales.
You could buy that mask,
allowing fans to quite literally wear the film's authenticity.
Yeah.
It was a comprehensive campaign designed to generate immense buzz and translate it into box office success.
And that buzz translated into a box office triumph of epic proportions. The film grossed an astonishing $259.9 million worldwide on a modest $10 million budget.
Incredible numbers.
Yielding a staggering net profit of $128.5 million. That's an incredible return on investment, a clear signal that they had hit a nerve with audiences.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
This level of success is monumental for a legacy sequel and for the horror genre as a whole. It confirmed the enduring power of classic horror IPs when handled with care and vision.
Yeah, proves the model works.
Proving that sometimes audiences just want the original terror done right, without decades of baggage. The film broke multiple records in its opening weekend. $76.2 million in North America, making it the second-best October opening ever, right behind Venom at the time.
Huge opening.
It was the biggest Blumhouse debut at that point, a testament to their growing influence, and the highest-grossing Halloween franchise debut ever.
Wow.
It also became the best ever for a film starring a lead actress over 55 years old, a huge testament to Jamie Lee Curtis's drawing power and the power of her compelling performance.
Amazing stat.
Within its opening weekend, it became the highest-grossing film in the entire franchise, which is simply astounding for a film that chose to ignore decades of lore. This proved a bold, focused vision can resonate more than a convoluted history.
The critical reception was largely positive, a real return to form for the franchise after years in the wilderness.
Yeah, critics mostly dug it.
Rotten Tomatoes gave it 79% approval, with an average of 6.8 out of 10, and their critical consensus noted it largely wipes the slate clean after decades of disappointing sequels, ignoring increasingly elaborate mythology in favor of basic, yet still effective ingredients.
Sums it up pretty well.
Metacritic gave it 67 out of 100, indicating generally favorable reviews, and CinemaScore audiences gave it a B+ say, which for horror is often considered solid.
Right, B+ is pretty good for a horror audience score. This generally favorable reception is significant. Critics largely responded positively to its back-to-basics approach, praising its ability to recapture the chilling atmosphere of the original while adding fresh, meaningful layers. Peter DeBruge of Variety called it an act of fan service disguised as a horror movie, tying up the mythology while delivering plenty of fresh suspense. Brian Bishop of The Verge said it was better than almost every other sequel, a fitting coda, highlighting its success in concluding Laurie's original story arc.
High praise.
Leah Greenblatt of Entertainment Weekly described it as a faithful, fundamental sequel, and funny too, suggesting a surprising blend of tones that worked for many. Bloody Disgusting praised its satisfying Laurie versus Michael showdown, emphasizing the emotional payoff of that 4-decade confrontation.
That final fight was intense.
And Dread Central even noted it was quite possibly the scariest Michael Myers has ever been. These are strong endorsements that underscore the film's successful execution of its ambitious vision.
However, not everyone loved it. Some critics had mixed or negative opinions, showing that even with a strong vision, not every element lands for every viewer.
True. It wasn't universal praise.
Eric Cohn of IndieWire criticized the dialogue and staging, even though he praised its commitment to Carpenter's themes. Brian Tellerico of RogerEbert.com found it sometimes incompetent slackness and lacking atmosphere compared to the original.
Tough comparison, the original.
Suggesting it didn't quite capture the same subtle dread. And Scott Mendelson of Forbes called it not very good or tightly directed, and it fails as a character play in a scary movie. A particularly harsh assessment.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Mendelson wasn't a fan. This range of opinions is important to highlight, as it shows that while broadly successful and well-received, the film's specific approach didn't connect with all viewers.
Right.
Some found its adherence to basic horror lacking, or its execution flawed in certain areas, particularly when held up to the impossible standard of the 1978 original. It's a reminder that even critically successful films can have detractors who highlight perceived weaknesses, offering a more nuanced view of its reception and sparking debate among fans about its ultimate place in the franchise.
Beyond the box office and reviews, the film also received significant accolades. It was the runner-up for the Grolsch People's Choice Midnight Madness Award at TIFF.
Big deal for genre films.
A prestigious award for genre films, and it snagged 4 Fangoria Chainsaw Award nominations, including Best Wide Release, Best Actor, Best Actress, and Best Makeup FX.
Chainsaw Awards. Nice.
It also received a Saturn Award nomination for Best Horror Film, with Jamie Lee Curtis winning for Best Actress.
She deserved that. Her performance was incredible.
Even Ryan Reese, who played Dana Haynes, was nominated for Most Frightened Performance at the MTV Movie and TV Awards.
That's a fun one. These accolades, particularly for Curtis's powerful performance and the film's overall impact on the horror genre, demonstrate its success beyond just financial numbers. Winning a Saturn Award for Best Actress is a significant achievement for a horror film, often a genre overlooked by major awards, solidifying its place as a well-regarded installment and a significant cultural moment in horror. These recognitions proved that the film not only delivered on scares, but also on compelling performances and technical craft, marking it as a standout in a crowded genre.
And finally, its legacy. Halloween 2018 is frequently cited as a key inspiration for a whole new wave of horror films that adopted its requel or legacy sequel or soft reboot approach.
The requel.
This film truly defined that model for the modern era.
It absolutely did. Ultimately, Halloween 2018 didn't just revive a franchise. It inadvertently authored the blueprint for the modern requel.
Right. Explain that again for listeners.
Yeah, so a requel is basically a film that functions as both a sequel and a soft reboot. It often ignores previous, sometimes really convoluted installments to streamline the continuity.
Like Halloween did.
Exactly. And it re-energizes a franchise by bringing back original cast members alongside new ones. Halloween 2018 provided a clear, commercially successful blueprint for this by showing how to honor the original while creating a new narrative path.
And others followed suit.
Oh yeah, we've seen this model explicitly adopted by numerous other films. For instance, Candyman 2021 brought back Tony Todd while creating a contemporary socially conscious sequel to the 1992 original, largely ignoring its prior direct sequels.
Example.
Scream 2022 cleverly played with the requel concept itself, featuring original cast members alongside a new generation of victims and killers. Even Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 attempted a similar approach.
That one was less successful, maybe.
Yeah, debatable results there. And more recently, The Exorcist, Believer 2023, also followed this strategy, bringing back Ellen Burstyn from the original. It proved that by stripping away convoluted lore and returning to the essence of what made the original great, a decades-old franchise could become thrillingly relevant again.
Yeah.
And of course, the 2018 film was so successful that it immediately spawned 2 more direct sequels.
Kills and Ends.
Halloween Kills in 2021 and Halloween Ends in 2022, completing a new, tightly woven trilogy built on this fresh foundation.
So to recap this deep dive, Halloween 2018 emerged from a truly tumultuous development history, a period marked by creative indecision and abandoned projects that nearly buried the franchise.
A real roller coaster.
Its eventual critical and commercial triumph was largely due to a bold decision to reset its continuity, wiping away decades of baggage. John Carpenter's guiding hand, restoring Michael Myers to his terrifying, unknowable roots.
Crucial elements.
Jamie Lee Curtis's powerful return as a trauma-informed, actively resilient survivor, and its profound influence on a new wave of horror requels, proving that the past can indeed inform a thrilling future.
It's a fascinating case study in franchise revitalization, showing that sometimes, to move forward, you have to look back and distill what made something truly resonate in the first place.
Well said.
For you, the listener, consider what it truly takes for a decades-old horror icon like Michael Myers to remain terrifying and relevant in a modern context. And whether this requel model, with its stripped-down, focused return to roots, is indeed the future of legacy franchises across all genres, or if there's an inherent limit to how many times you can return to the well. What other horror series or even non-horror franchises do you think could benefit from such a bold, focused return to their origins?
Something to truly mull over. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Halloween 2018. We'll see you next time.